covering the murder of Charles Eugene Wolfe Jr., a.k.a. known as Gino Bravo, or Gorgeous Gino. Before I start, this episode does contain topics of murder, violence, drug use, drugs, and possibly foul language. We'll see where we go with it. So, may not be suitable for children under 17 or 13. Just so you know, I wanted to let you know. Thank you to Eddie B for being my special guest today and also letting me do what I love to do, which is cover true crime. Say hi.
Hello. How's it going today, Lauren?
It's going very good. I've been extremely busy this week. Everybody go get your COVID vaccine. That's what I've been doing. Upon working over 40 hours a week in healthcare, I've been volunteering to give my COVID vaccine. So go out and get it. Stay safe. Keep everybody else safe. Let's get through this together. Okay. Diving into this. You ready?
Yeah, I can't wait. I've been waiting for this one. This is a good story,
This is
a good
crazy
mystery
story.
You know, I rewatched a little bit of the Dark Side episode. So If you guys have not seen the Dark Side episode of Gino Hernandez, please go back and check it out.
It's amazing.
It will give you a little bit more ideal of what we're talking about here today.
Yeah, plus they also have video to go along with it, so it's great. Okay, let's dive in. February 4th, 1986, David Manning and Rick Hazard, two WCCW officials with several local police officers, broke into Wolfe's Highland Park, Texas condo and noticed a very distinct smell that they only know to be a decomposing body. So when they found him dead in his Highland Park, Texas condo, he had been dead for approximately 3 to 4 days. They initially ruled the death a homicide upon discovering his body.
Now, is this mystery or this murder, is it a closed case, Lauren?
According to the police officers, yes, it is a closed case. But we'll get into that a little bit later because there's quite a few conspiracies on how he died, and I'll let you know about that a little bit later. So, diving into who he was, Charles Eugene Wolfe, born August 8th, 1957, also in Highland Park, Texas. He is better known for his ring name, Gino Hernandez, or Gorgeous Gino. His appearances with the Dallas, Texas-based World Class Championship Wrestling, as I mentioned earlier, WCCW, began between 1976 and 1986. So he was kind of in and out WCCW for a few years. He touched on a few other things. If any of you know or have seen the Dark Side episodes, you know what a heel he was. He was probably one of the best people on the microphone. He could make you love to hate him within a few seconds. His promotions, his promos were top notch. Everybody loved hearing his promos, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Just catching some of those clips on the Dark Side, like he definitely was the heel that would need maybe a cop's assistance to get, to the dressing room or possibly out of the stadium. And, when you're that good at what you're doing, then you're usually on top.
Yeah. He was the best at that. But I didn't know this. Did you know he started out as a babyface?
Absolutely not. It wasn't documented enough. Some of the history I know is just who he wrestled with, and he was well liked, but it's just all they want to put out there for us to know, Lauren, is just the fact that
his death,
the heel side of it, and then all the conspiracies that just lead into it.
Well, little info bit here. His rookie year, he was a babyface, so he started out in I think it's Farhat's big time wrestling promotion in Detroit, Michigan. He was very young. He was very good looking. All the female fans adored him. He had this long, gorgeous hair. he would have definitely been a demo god, even when he turned heel, as Chris Jericho would put over. Yes. He won Big Timer's top title, their version of NWA's U.S. Heavyweight Championship, by defeating Bulldog Don Kent. He later lost the Detroit title to the Sheik, who was his real-life boss. Did you know that?
Yeah, the Sheik's well-known. It's well-known, I should say. Sheik's trained a lot of wrestlers.
I didn't know that.
He's mentored a lot of wrestlers. We could go down a long rabbit hole list of people that Sheik's been involved in. But yeah.
Yeah. So he was their top baso psycho Arab hill persona, the Sheik was. And it seems like he was very good at what he did. But I had no clue that he was kind of managing Gino.
Well, not to cut you off, but
if
you think about it, these two personas, the Gino love to hate the guy, and then obviously Sheik, he's his gimmick is obviously a foreigner, and being in America, we all know that that's, gonna be the first thing that the crowd cheers against is the foreign act. And with Gino being so good at how heelish he was, what a combo.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, definitely. Starting out his WCCW days, he started out wrestling in San Antonio, Texas territory. He was San Antonio, Texas, the Southwest Territory, or SCW. After being trained by Jose Lothario, he was initially in a tag team with Lothario, then turned into a singles act via the protege mentor storyline. So they started out together, and then they kind of started feuding with each other. So the storyline feud with Lothario culminated into a hair versus hair match, which Gino had lost, which kind of was a big deal because he had amazing hair.
Huge deal. And noted Adams as well. Adams was a pretty stunning male performer. And
no, this one first was with Lothario.
Oh, this is Lothario.
We haven't got to Adams yet. But yeah, so even back then, this was his first hair versus hair match. Now we'll talk about another one a little bit later. So he kind of started that out with Lothario back, can't even know. So back in his rookie years again. In the late 70s, early 80s, Gino worked the Dallas-based territory for WCCW. It was also, at that time, NWA's, it was kind of known as NW, or kind of, you could explain it as NWA Big Time Wrestling at the time. That was their kind of what they were back then.
Sure, it was that area was hot, Lauren. The Texas area,
which I didn't know.
We know Memphis was huge, but Texas was ran by the Von Erichs for the longest time, and I don't know if we'll get into the Von Erichs at all.
Sure are. My next bullet.
Being a big name in Texas in the late 70s, early 80s was pretty big, and I'm sure we'll get into it in a second. But if you came from that territory, and like I said, obviously the Memphis territory, going into WWF or WCW or NWA, you were doing something right.
So in the late 70s, early 80s, I didn't know that the SCW or Southwestern Championship Territory was very big, because mostly you heard about OVW and Ohio Valley Wrestling, if you don't know what that means. But yeah, my next bullet point was the highlight was a storyline feud with Gino Hernandez and David Von Erich over the NWA Texas Heavyweight Championship, which he won, but then later lost a couple days back to David Von Erich. Gino returned to SCW, forming a hugely popular tag team, the dynamic duo with Tully Blanchard first.
Yeah, good old Tully. Another great Texas. I mean, his daddy was big down there. His daddy ran a wrestling promotion as well. That's why Tully was so good, I do believe, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But even the David Von Erich thing, to jump back to that, if you watch The Dark Side of the Ring, there's also a Von Erich edition, and they don't really talk much.
So sad.
They don't talk enough about Gino and
not at all,
and his run in their era down there in the Texas territory
with the Von Erichs, yeah.
But you can kind of put two and two together when you watch both these episodes, and just imagine yourself in that period of time and
down there, especially the
stardom. It's way different than now, Lauren.
It is.
Back then, it meant something, and to fans, just to touch a wrestler walking by was just as much now as a kid getting an autograph or an item actually from an athlete or wrestler. So
right, yeah, exactly. It really was, and like I said, I didn't really know how big Texas was of a wrestling place, so to speak. So that was the first dynamic duo, him, Gino, and Tully. I will talk about another one later on, so don't get confused. Gino and Tully's tag team became so successful that they were the top heels in the state of Texas. The top heels in the state of Texas, regardless of territory. So that doesn't mean in SCW. It doesn't mean in OVW. They were the top heels in the state of Texas. I think that is when he kind of started getting the feel for what success was. It brought in money, cars, girls, obviously, and unfortunately drugs. So like you were saying earlier, the party lifestyle back then, it was kind of relevant for heel wrestlers to kind of live their persona outside of the ring, which meant you kept being a heel when you were on the streets, at the store, getting gas. And that kind of played a role, I believe, in his beginning of his drug use. Yeah,
back then, if you was in a feud, you didn't catch them wrestlers around each other.
Not at all.
Nowadays,
social media
you're more
has
likely,
ruined that.
No, to be honest, more likely that if they're in a feud with each other nowadays, they're riding with each other.
Yeah.
They might even
staying at each other's houses.
Staying in the same hotel room. Who knows? But yeah, just like you said, to refer back to living the lifestyle, it's very easily to maybe even convince your own self that outside the ring, you can still be what you are inside the ring. And back then, especially because of the stardom.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm not exactly sure that's when he started his drug use, but it was kind of a known thing that wrestlers live fast, die hard, kind of party style life. And, of course, drugs, especially cocaine, definitely helped them, get through the pain and the late nights and the travel of, going from state to state, place to place, event to event, you name it. So, in 1982, Gino instigated a storyline feud with Chavo Guerrero by hitting him over the head with a beer bottle and later insulting the Guerrero family name. Do you remember anything about that? Which I'm sure was a huge wrestling name back then, the Guerrero.
Still is to this day.
Yeah.
And I don't remember much about it. I went back and watched, obviously, this. I watched hours on hours of just old wrestling and stuff. I don't really recall this, but I do know this.
It was a short-lived feud.
The Guerrero family name still lives to this day in wrestling.
Yeah, it does.
And back then, it was way bigger than it ever had or ever was back then. And
okay.
And this leads once again leads back to the territory situation.
Yeah.
You didn't, sometimes back then you didn't get a lot of the faces in every territory. Not everybody traveled. So,
right.
That might be why it was such a short-lived feud, because Gino, his popularity got him out of where he was at.
True. It sure did. Gino returned to WCCW in 1984. At different times, he was an individual wrestler or collectively feuding with the Von Erichs, Mike, Kevin, and Kerry, all three of them. So he was definitely in in a lot of wrestling matches with the Von Erichs. He knew him well. Unfortunately, if you know that story, it's a very sad story about suicide and drugs.
Yeah, very sad story.
Maybe we'll cover it sometime.
Tough story to watch, tough story to listen
beyond heartbreaking.
But it's reality.
It is.
Let's say this,
that kind of shines a light on this era and drug use and mental health, for sure.
Let's think of this, too. That's another thing that just popped in my head while you were reading some of those facts. You know, being in that territory that the Von Erichs ran, it makes sense now that he had so many feuds with the Von Erichs because he was bringing in the money. So obviously, if you're running an organization or a promotion, I should say, you want your top talent who brings the most money, obviously on the main card. And at this time, we were, you're talking
84,
the sons of the promoter and the biggest drawing heel, and
exactly,
it makes sense.
It did, absolutely, and. We'll talk a little bit about more of that later. The summer of 84, Gino paired with Nicola Roberts, which was billed Andrea the Lady Giant, or Andre the Giant.
Yeah.
Really? Okay. So the duo worked a series of mixed tag team matches against Sunshine and Mike Von Erich.
This as well.
I didn't know he worked with Andre the Giant.
This falls into the same category. Andre the Giant was an attraction.
Huge.
His whole life in wrestling, his whole life period was an attraction. Unfortunately for him, that was part of the things he hated the most. But at this time, he obviously was on probably a southern tour, and once again, the biggest attraction with right now in that time. The biggest heel or the biggest draw.
Yeah.
Let's combine them. I'm sure they were looking at it like we're just stacking money on top of money.
Yeah. It was just icing on the cake.
I can't blame him. I can't blame him.
Nope. In August of the same year, 1984, Gino was paired with WCCW newcomer Jake the Snake Roberts.
Jakester.
Yeah. Which was crazy. He was the newcomer in 1984. He is another great heel.
Yes. Now, I'll give you, Lauren, his father, Grizzly Adams.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Was a huge wrestling star. Now, he's mentioned on many documentaries his, I guess, what do you call it, their relationship.
Yeah.
It's not good, and it never was good. And he blames his dad on a lot of things, but Jake the Snake, once again, like Von Erichs, came from a wrestling family, and he even mentions it himself. Didn't really have no other choice. That's kind of all he knew, and he fell in love with it and ran with it. Obviously, great. It got him really far. We had some unfortunate mishaps along the way. We know that story, but
again, 84,
back at this time in 1984, Jake the Snake was also another heel on top of his game.
Yeah, he was. So might as well make sense to put both the two top heels against each other, right? Well, or they paired them together. So later on, on the same year, he formed a tag team with Chris Adams, which WCCW called the Dynamic Duo. This version proved even more famous and drew high revenues and TV ratings for the world class in their feuds with the Von Erichs. So Chris Adams, Gino Hernandez versus the Von Erichs. Why not? The duo invented the famed gold scissors gimmick, snipping hair from the heads of their incapacitated opponents right after defeating them. Again, a hair versus hair match.
Yeah, now this is the one I was relating to earlier as we were talking.
It was, yeah.
This is the most famous one that I remember, and the reason being, like I said earlier, was because of Adams. Adams at this time was on his way up. He was peaking. He was going to be just as big as Gino. And I still remember, actually, Adams' career past this, but, this was going to be probably the biggest tag team heel going into 85, 86, if it would have, things would have worked out the right way.
Well, this dynamic duo from 84 definitely pushed Gino and Chris Adams, right? Yes, Chris Adams into stardom even more.
Yeah.
Again, this is when they were starting to, get a little bit concerned about Gino and his drug use. His cocaine habit was getting highly out of control by this time, unfortunately. He had everything, though. He had the good looks. He had the hair. He had the heel gimmick, which was top notch, which obviously brought money and anything else that he could want. Cars, money, girls, he had it all. Like I said, he was
living the dream
easy.
At the time. I mean,
literally living the dream. Yeah. He had made it by this point. So that match, October 6th, 1986, Adam and Hernandez lost the hair match against Kevin and Carrie Von Erich at the Cotton Bowl. They had to chase, literally, the other, I believe it was Mike Von Erich. One of the Von Erichs literally had to chase Gino Hernandez and hold him down so they could shave his head.
Yeah, watching the video, I'm not sure how much that was planned and how much it wasn't.
Right,
but
yeah.
It definitely, there was no way either one, Gino nor Adams, was getting out of that building without their head shaved.
Yep.
Those fans were not going to let it happen.
Nope. They were the heels you love to hate, and the Von Erichs were like gold back then. So his hair, luckily, grew back within 2 months, where Chris Adams took a little bit more time. December 1985, Gino was booked to turn on Adams. The intended storyline in it was the intended storyline in WCCW throughout 1986. So they were planning for a while. Like I just mentioned, the October 6, 1986 hair versus hair match that they lost to the Von Erichs. They were kind of already planning for Gino to turn on Adams before this hair versus hair match.
Yeah,
so,
the good ones never last together. It always happens. You see it even to this day.
The dynamic duo was going down for sure. They were splitting up. So, January 27th, 1986, during a grudge match in Fort Worth, Texas, Hernandez threw a hair removing product deemed the Freebird hair cream because it was used by
the fabulous
yes,
Freebirds.
Thank you.
Michael P.S. Hayes.
Yes,
Terry Gordy and company. What's crazy about that, Lauren, if you see that video, I'm not sure what hair cream they were using, but I've never seen hair cream in that color before.
What color is it?
It was black. It was really weird. It was
okay.
It was such a
weird,
an odd thing, but go on. I know what you're about to lead into here.
Yep.
I know it's the best.
It is the best. This is probably one of their most popular matches. So it's a grudge match, Fort Worth, Texas. Hernandez threw the hair cream, the Freebird hair cream, into Adams' face, rendering Adams blind. So Adams, this was a little bit of a kayfabe thing. Adams was considered blind after then, but in reality, Adams wanted to return to his homeland of England to spend time with his new wife and family. When you saw Adams outside and in the public, he played the blindness to a T. You did not catch him without a eye patch on or something over his head.
He had both eyes covered for the longest time, and they would show here and there, they would show clips of him, like a news reporter trying to get a comment from him and him getting in a car. And
yep.
It was pretty cool. This is what I wish wrestling would still do.
I know. It's unfortunate. Like I said a little bit earlier, social media has killed kayfabe for real. So back then, like I said, they played it to a T. You were out caught in public. Yes, you bet your ass he wore that eye patch. So a few days after this grudge match with Adams, Gino was scheduled to a house show at the Dallas Sportatorium that Friday. Okay, I messed up my notes. A few days later, on a Thursday, Gino was scheduled to a house show. That Friday, he was scheduled in Dallas at the Sportatorium. Gino no-showed both events, and phone calls to Gino went unanswered. So, very unusual for Gino Hernandez, especially after a huge event like this grudge match against Adams. He is no-showing a house show and a huge Dallas Sportatorium event Thursday and Friday.
Yeah, let's be honest. I mean, that right there should have been a telltale sign that something wasn't right.
It sure was.
I don't know what led into this and what happened prior, but to me, just one no-show could be an accident, but what's next to come, kind of, I just don't understand. I feel like something's missing.
Something's going on, and we're not the only ones who thought that. So, remind you that grudge match with Adams was January 27th. This is a couple days later. This is probably a week later.
And noted this, Lauren, like, it's documented in a lot of wrestling documentaries and all that great Dark Side of the Ring stuff. The travel back then was pretty extensive.
Yes, it was.
You know, you could be in a town 2-3 nights at the most, but you was moving a lot. So, you know, that's why a red flag, in my opinion, when you miss a event, you know, most of the time they're not going to be in that same building the next night.
No.
So they're obviously not going to be in the same hotel.
Right.
But then again, back in the early days, they did it a little different. The territories kind of kept in a good schedule, and where they would kind of plan it out to where you were close enough to travel to each event and still stay in the same place, if you know what I mean.
Right. Yeah. Like he stayed in the Southwest Territory quite a bit. Yeah. So for him to miss a house show, miss a big Dallas Sportatorium show in his home state, huge. So that's when, of course, we end up on February 4th. They go to check on him. Manning and Hazard and local police officers found Gino dead about 3 or 4 days in his Highland Park, Texas condo. The police initially ruled the death a homicide. But this is where the conspiracy starts, because days later, after they received the autopsy report, the death was changed to an overdose. And for them to change the manner of death from a homicide to an OD is a big deal.
Yeah,
they have to have some big proof.
Like that there is sketchy in itself.
Yeah, it was very sketchy. So, following the autopsy results, his death was ruled a cocaine overdose. Which, going back and speaking with his friends Jake the Snake, Gary Hart, there are a few people that said his cocaine habit was very out of control at that point. Right. So it kind of made sense.
It's an easy cover up if you think about it.
Exactly. Yeah, that's why I said this is where conspiracy starts. His drug abuse was no secret to many world-class mainstays, including on-screen manager, one-time booker Gary Hart, who claimed to have repeatedly encouraged Wolfe, I am now going to use his legal name, to get clean, quote unquote. In the DVD documentary series, The Triumph and Tragedy of World-Class Championship Wrestling, Hart said that he had pictures of all the wrestlers he managed, except for Gino Hernandez, because seeing the images of him and the resulting memories of his dead too soon colleague was too emotionally upsetting for Hart. Again, live fast, die hard kind of lifestyle. So Wolfe's career happened in an era of pro wrestling in which excessive partying was a more than common piece of the U.S. wrestlers' daily lifestyle. Compounding matters, promoters and bookers commonly directed wrestlers to live their gimmick, quote unquote, which is what we've been talking about this whole time. While Vince McMahon broke with pro wrestling's strongly held tradition of kayfabe, in 1987, the rest of the industry was reluctant to follow McMahon's lead. Many of the superstars included in the 1990s to 2001's wave of premature wrestler death had been heavily abusers of performance-enhancing drugs and party drugs, alcohol and other illicit drugs or illegal drugs with extremely high purity levels. So this has been quite a problem in wrestling for a long time. So
yeah, no secret.
No secret at all. So the Syndicate World Class TV episode scheduled to air the weekend of February 15th, 1986, originally included a Gino Hernandez. All right, you're listening to Lauren's Murder Mysteries here on the Eeez N Beez Podcast. Of course, my special guest today is Eddie B.
Yo, yo, yo!
Thank you so much for letting me finish this up. It's a case we've been dying to cover
this
for
is a
a
great
long
case.
time.
You know, Gino Hernandez was a great wrestler. Obviously, if you watch the documentary, he was probably we know he was a great family man.
He was.
It was sad to see this end the way it did.
Yeah.
But as we talk today, Lauren, I think there's a lot of conspiracy still out there.
There's a lot of skepticism.
I have a few myself, so I can't wait to talk to you about it.
Yeah, let's finish up his death and how people found out about that. So like I was saying, he was the world-class TV episode scheduled to air the weekend of February 15th was originally to be a Gino Hernandez taped match from the Dallas Sportatorium. This match never aired. Instead, show announcer Bill Mercer gave an on-camera announcement of Gino's death, and a different match aired in his place. Not sure that was a good way to go.
Yeah, definitely not how they do it these days.
No, Gino definitely deserved more. Both Mercer and Mark Lawrence treated Hernandez's death, as well as Chris Adams' blinding angle, as equally significant during a time when World Class was about to go forward with their feud beginning at Texas Stadium. Gino's death definitely outweighed that. Chris Adams is nothing with the dynamic duo if he doesn't have Gino Hernandez, even if their feud is there, you know?
Well, what's kind of blows my mind is they continue, like you said, a little bit with the blinding act.
Right.
Well, we all know where that came from. We all know that's tied into.
Mm-hmm.
Nowadays, you know, it's not so much they want you to forget, but they want you to move on.
Just kind of sweep it under the rug and keep going.
Yeah, but they also, these days, they pay respect the right way. This here, I think, maybe was such a situation where it was caught off guard.
Absolutely.
And not expecting. And at the time,
they didn't know what to do.
They probably would have lost more money by not airing versus doing what they did. Yeah.
So, Chris Adams returned the following May and won the World Class Heavyweight Championship 2 months later. So, in July.
Deservingly.
Yeah, you know, it needed to happen one way or another, and, you know, that's probably the way they did it. Okay, so we're going to start getting into some skepticism, conspiracies. So, the funeral service of Gino Hernandez, aka Charles Wolfe, and its expenses were handled by a reputed local drug dealer and trafficker named John Royal, with who Gino had become friends with. So, obviously, family members were very uncomfortable with Royal and his associates overseeing the funeral proceedings. Many had never heard of or met them prior to Wolfe's death. So, imagine your beloved family member dies tragically very young. First off, they botch the manner of death from homicide to a drug overdose. And then this local drug dealer and trafficker says, hey, don't worry about the funeral. I got it. And by the way, I'm going to be there front row.
Yeah, but also don't forget this. Reportedly, supposed. Now, it's hard to tell what the truth really is after watching the episode. You know, at the time, though, supposedly he had told Gino's mother, you know, hey, he owed me a lot of money.
Yeah, that's one of our
conspiracies. That could have been an add-in just to throw a little salsa on the eggs. But on the flip side, I mean, why wouldn't you believe it? It's coming from a man you don't know, a known drug dealer, known trafficker, and you know, he's coming to pay for everything. Well,
yeah, how would you feel about that?
no matter what's being said. And on top of that, you're grieving, so it's a lot of emotions, a lot of stuff mixed into one. And to be honest, I don't know how I would feel. I don't know if I could have the right emotions to be mad or concerned, because I would be just so confused.
Well, that's the thing. Like, you take a death and a certain amount of emotions and a certain kind of, I don't know what I'm trying to say. You go through the grief process, then you go through the anger process, then you go through, the grief process is one that's different to everybody, but when you throw this into the grief process, it kind of throws everything for a loop, so to speak, because you don't know whether your grieving process is going to start out with anger first, then move on to, something else. And then you can't even grieve until later, So by no means am I a psychologist or
no experts here at all. Yeah.
No, not at all. But this is just my take on it. This is Eeez's take on it, and it's very interesting. So, like I said earlier, the police dropped the homicide investigation into Hernandez's death. Some still believe his murder was a drug-related incident. According to David Manning, Hernandez had 5 times the amount of cocaine in his system that would have resulted in a fatality. 5 times.
I'll stop you right there. That right there as another red flag, as we would speak.
Mm-hmm.
It just doesn't make sense.
It doesn't. It's almost like a hot
that
shot.
Should have been notified or noticed right away the first day the coroner's office walked in to examine the guy. Or the forensic at the actual site should have noted that there had to be some kind of recreational drug use being going on with that amount. And we all know it's not possible to have that amount. So,
5 times in a system that would have resulted in a fatality. So he had the fatality amount times 5.
Yeah. So it's either one of 2 things, Lauren. Either it was somehow ingested into his system, which is likely, in different ways.
Well,
or B, here's another theory. The coroner at the coroner's office never liked Gino Hernandez.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe not so much the wrestler, maybe the person himself.
Right.
Or vice versa. He didn't know the real Gino Hernandez. He only knew the wrestler.
Right.
And let's be honest, back in those days, people took wrestling a lot more serious. And people got arrested back then for trying to hurt wrestlers. So, I could see something as, I hated that guy. I'm going to tell everybody he OD'd.
Right.
And that's wrong. But at that time, that could have easily happened.
Well, you kind of hit the nail on the head, because my next bullet point was they also found cocaine in his stomach.
Right, and that's my point is.
So, I mean, how does it get that?
It had to be ingested.
Yeah.
Now, whether he was
Eating
knocked unconscious
or...
and it was placed into his system, or let's talk about this. His paranoia at that time, which we haven't touched on, was through the roof, and it's been well documented. And I could see something where maybe he was so paranoid that he took his own life and knew that amount swallowed or ingested, or however you want to put it, was going to kill him, and that was going to end his problems. Maybe that, I hope it wasn't, but who knows?
I hope not too. I don't.
That's a coward's way out. I've always said that from day one. But let's be honest, when you're not mentally right in the head and you're on all this stuff and on top of the world on the side because you're professional in what you're doing,
he's a star.
But let's not get it too twisted. He was hated, but he was on top, so it's hard to speak of. But yet, when all this barrels into one, that
you never know what's going on in somebody's head. That could
definitely change somebody in a hurry, and I think that's what we saw. Unfortunately, like we spoke, we lost him way too early. But I just wish we knew the truth behind it, because all these points that you've read here on this today doesn't lead up to
It doesn't give a good answer.
Yeah.
I don't think it gives a final answer to what initially
And
happened
let's
to him.
finish. Let's go ahead and knock this out.
Yeah.
You know, the
And then
final
we'll talk
answer.
about it a little bit more.
The final answer they gave on the show to his mother. You know, this suspect supposedly gave her the comforting words of, "Hey, you don't have to be worried no more. Nobody's after your family. Nobody's at you know that right there just on top of everything that we know with the guy that paid for all the funeral and stuff. It just blew my mind because it made me feel like that guy, the John Royal guy, was on top in that era. He got popped, busted, and everything changed. And this guy was forgotten about. Like, we don't need to worry about hunting down this family to get the money that was owed, because honestly, they might have made money off of the whole situation in the long run.
We just don't know. It's one of those things we don't know, and we may not ever know. So, so like I said, he had cocaine in his stomach. David Manning also suspected foul play due to the fact that Hernandez's Gino's deadbolt on his doors were not locked, as he made it a habit in the past to lock the deadbolt at all times. Like Eddie said, he was beyond paranoid. And when he did drugs, when he did cocaine, it made him even more paranoid. I think he had multiple locks on his door. So to find him without a locked door at all was a red flag, to say the least.
Absolutely. Leave us your comments, folks. We want to know what your conspiracy thoughts are, what you think maybe possibly happened, what you think.
Yeah, let us know what
of
your
our thoughts
is.
on these conspiracies
Do you
as
agree
we
with
go
us?
through them
Do you
here.
not agree
We'd love
with
to hear your
us?
feedback. We love doing these murder mysteries with Lauren, as this was the second installment here on the Eeez N Beez podcast, and we'll definitely be diving into much more in the future. So let us know what your guys' thoughts are on these murder mysteries here done by Lauren.
Right, yeah. If you have a specific murder mystery you want me to cover in the future, let me know. Like, just put it out there. Hey, cover this one, or
you can maybe be the guest host. You never know.
Yeah,
Lauren's always looking for somebody to talk to or talk with about these crazy murder mysteries.
My crazy Gemini mind wants to bond with somebody else, so let's do it. In the weeks before Gino's death, he had expressed to Manning and others the belief that his life was being threatened. So, again, another reason for the deadbolt to be locked at all times. He had a feeling his life was in danger. Not a good thing. His former rival, Michael P. Hayes, said in a 2016 interview, quote, "I have a real hard time believing that Gino Hernandez OD'd. He was most definitely hanging with the wrong crowd and either ran his mouth too much or knew too much or all of the above," unquote.
Yeah, definitely, like he said, that it is too much, it was too easily to be that way. And, you know, coming from somebody that's been around him like Michael P.S. Hayes, that's definitely believable when it comes, you know, same with Jake the Snake.
Yep. So here's another big quote from Jake the Snake Roberts, saying Gino was attached to some heavy people. He was running in some pretty big circles. Man, that maybe he didn't belong.
Yeah, definitely. And that leads right into the drug world. Once you're in there, you're in there. And it seems like to me, the fame and everything got to him, the lifestyle, and he got in a little deeper than he wanted to. And the paranoia caught up to him, whether there was somebody after him or there wasn't somebody after him. Mm-hmm. And I'm not too sure whether I think that, you know, let's put it this way. If somebody physically took his life, they did a very good job of covering up their tracks.
It was a true hit job, I believe. Like Eddie B said earlier, his mother had received reports from John Royal, the drug dealer trafficker that funded the funeral, that Gino had owed him debts and well, let's just be honest, a dead man can't pay for debts anymore. So, I mean, that kind of, going on that quote, dead men can't pay, it kind of makes me lean towards maybe it was an overdose, you know? So, if you're a drug dealer and somebody owes you thousands upon thousands of dollars, possibly more, you're going to want that money eventually one way or another. And they cannot pay you if they are dead.
That's what,
and let's be honest, Gino was making some good money back then.
Yeah, here's the other theory though on that. Like, I don't get is if he owed so much money and him dead was worth more than him alive. Mm-hmm. I don't get that.
I don't either.
And then you're gonna pull money out of your own pocket to pay for
pay for the funeral.
Yeah.
Right.
Like,
so,
to me,
but why would you do that if he owed you money? You know.
To me, it sounds like there was more to this deal, and also like if he was. Or he was on top, man, I just don't see them wanting to ruin that at that time because his stardom probably brought them more money as well.
Exactly. I mean, you owe somebody money, he can get it for you.
But then again,
just give him a couple months.
Running and hiding. That could have been another possible.
Right, which we just don't know. Like I said, we just don't know. So both his mom and did I mention? Well, his mom and I believe his ex-wife had also explored the possibility that maybe Gino faked his own death, given that he had once talked about doing so, and because the autopsy report was full of errors. They got his ethnicity wrong. They got his physicality wrong. The family never saw the body.
Yep. And once again, Lauren, before you go any further, that leads right back to what I said. That whoever was dealing with him on that night,
whoever had his autopsy,
I think, honestly, did not like him.
Well, I'm kind of blaming the autopsy, the coroner, for fucking up this autopsy.
That's what I'm saying. And then pronouncing him OD'd with cocaine was just cherry on top because, think about it. They mess up all of his authenticity, his race,
his height, his build,
weight, the reason of death,
the manner of death. There were so many things changed on this autopsy. I would love to see the initial report. Honestly.
On the flip side, let's think about what you talked about, the faking the death situation.
Yeah.
I think that's the farthest out of all of these, honestly, to be fetched, because here's why. A man in his stature, I would never, ever, there's no way, because I can say this myself, I would never be able to fake my death and not be able to go back and kiss my mama. There's just no way. And I don't see this guy. He was a very good family man. With his situation being raised by his mom. Yeah. No way he's faking his death and never talking to her again. Right. Now, on the flip side, she could be hiding some things too. Mm-hmm. But I don't know. That'd be a hard lie to live. That's for sure.
Absolutely. That's kind of along those lines that maybe Tupac and Biggie are faking their deaths. Like, same thing. If you've ever seen their moms talk on TV, they are absolutely heartbroken, both of them. And seeing what you have done to your own mother, I don't see it happening. No, really? There's no way you can't give your mom and your family some sort of closure, But that was his mom and his ex-wife had said that he had mentioned or had talked about doing so once, but it's a hard thing to do. I don't think it happened. That is probably a number 1 out of 10 on my conspiracy pieces of bacon of believability.
I get you on that one.
Wrestler Brutus Beefcake had rejected the murder theory, saying that Hernandez had, quote, a serious drug problem, unquote, and was, quote, an intense, crazy partier, unquote. For Brutus Beefcake to say that, that's a pretty big deal.
Well, and we won't go too far with Bruce's words because we know he's in the same boat.
Correct. Same with Jake the
all
Snake.
These guys, all these guys in that era were partiers.
Hayes,
you couldn't.
Everybody was partying back then. Let's just get it out there.
Let's not label, but let's just say this. The truth we may never know,
Yep.
But these theories that we got, I think, will go far away. And if you guys are listening out there and you have a great theory, make sure you comment.
Please do.
Like,
I have
share,
got
subscribe.
to know something else about this
Give us
case.
a follow. Let us know what you think about Lauren's second installment here of Murder Mysteries. And Lauren, before we wrap this up, let's get our last conspiracy.
Okay, so we talked about a couple faking his own death, getting a hit by a potential gang hitman, and ODing.
All right, so we're gonna play a game to end the episode here, Lauren.
Okay, let's do it.
If you're writing on the paper reason of death, what's it gonna be?
I'm going with homicide. Honestly, I believe somebody went in with the intention of getting money. He didn't have money. I believe he let somebody into his house and they later give him a hot shot after possibly doing drugs together. He let somebody in.
Theory.
He's like, hey man, you owe me this money. Let's settle this now. It didn't obviously happen. They did some drugs together. And then
believable.
They had a hot shot that they injected somewhere. Because that was the thing why I want to see the autopsy report, the initial one.
Yeah.
I believe this coroner fucked it up. But are there ever needle marks on him?
Right,
Did they ever find a needle mark anywhere in between his toes, like hidden really well behind his ears, in a vein or
How
something?
can we believe after what we read on what was already botched?
Right, yeah. It was so botched that A, maybe they didn't find one, or B, maybe they didn't report on finding one. Yeah, they really
so I'm
did.
going to give you my last theory before we get out of here. You know, I do believe your theory is a good one, but I'm going to have to lean towards this one. Unfortunately, as much as I hate to say it, I'm not sure what it's called, but an accidental suicide.
Okay, you accidentally think he OD'd.
And the reason being, I think, because also we never noted this. It was brought up more than once in the documentary on Dark Side of the Ring. The amounts of cocaine he had at his home,
unbelievable,
especially by his neighbor, lady friend that was on a lot of Dark Side. But here's what I'm thinking. My theory is this: he had a lot of cocaine, obviously, and at some point in the night, throughout the paranoia, somehow, some way,
he just kept doing it.
He was doing it, but a cup full or a large amount full that we've found in his system. He drank it somehow. Somehow it got into his.
It was in his stomach.
Into his system. And I know that sounds crazy because you're like, well, cocaine would dissolve and whatnot. But I'm speaking like this was tied up, or this was a big, large amount of baggie that fell into a drink or something crazy. I know that sounds far-fetched, but I feel like
he had it all over his house.
I feel like he was so messed up that he accidentally
added some to his drink, or a cup of water accidentally, and it was just way too much. But now we do know with drugs that you gain, after doing so much for so long, you gain a certain tolerance for it. So that 5 times the OD fatality
still
limit.
A lot, and I don't think anybody to this day could build a tolerance to do that.
Well, that jumps in with Kurt Cobain as well. Like he had a certain amount of over the legal limit, or the fatality limit, and it's one of those things. Your body gradually gets used to having this in its system, and it just needs more and more and more and more. But you're right. I think he maybe thought he could do so much, and then maybe just did 1 or 2 lines too many. But the 5 times is what really gets me. And it makes me think, that something else is going on. Like you said, maybe he accidentally added it to his coffee, or maybe a drink or something. You just don't know. And that's the thing that is so fascinating and also kind of frustrating, because you want to know, you want answers. But that's why it is a murder mystery.
Absolutely. Well, it's been an honor to be on the second installment, Lauren, of Murder Mysteries. I've had a blast.
Yeah, it's been fun.
Can't wait to dive into the third, or listen to the third one.
Yes.
If you enjoyed this out there, folks, make sure you like, share, subscribe, comment, follow us at eeezandbeez.org.
Let me know. Tell me, tell friends. We can do something you suggest. Like, help me pick out the next one.
And definitely let us know what your theories are and what you think of ours.
Oh, please give me another theory. In the meantime, I'm gonna keep researching for the next one. We don't know when, where that will be, but make sure you do as said, like, share, subscribe. Go back and check out the Viceland TV Dark Side of the Ring series. I think they named this one The Mysterious Death of Gorgeous Gino. Go back and watch that. It's great. I can't do it justice here, so you'll take away what I had given you and go in with an open mind and see if you can come up with another conspiracy theory, or if you think you know what happened. So thank you so much for letting me do this. Thanks for listening, and thanks for telling a friend. We'll see you next time on the Eeez N Beez Podcast.